Right. I think this is it. This is amazing. Welcome to the first edition of the Africa Football Business Show. My name is Shon Osimbo, and today we have a special guest. I'll be talking to Brian Wesaala. He's actually the founder of the Football Foundation for Africa. Yes, Brian? And this is an amazing platform and a way of talking about what is happening on the continent, because all our attention, most of the Africa's attention, is on the European leagues, European football players. So why not bring the conversation back home? So that is what this show will be exactly about, just bringing those conversations back home. How can we help football all the way from grassroots level to the top level to go to the next level, so that we can stop just praising the UEFAs, the other leagues outside the continent, and actually just start praising our own, growing our own, nurturing our own. And we'll be diving into that. And today, what a way to start this amazing show with the founder of the Football Foundation for Africa, who knows so much about football. He has invested in football. He talks about football every day. He interacts with so many stakeholders, football stakeholders across the world. Welcome, Brian Wesaala.
Thank you very much, Shon.
So briefly, just tell us who's Brian Wesaala and the journey behind the Football Foundation for Africa.
So who's Brian Wesaala? For a long time, I was an IT professional working for the United Nations. But now I consider myself the football guy, and specifically the African football guy. With regard to the journey of the FFA, it started around a little over 5 years ago, when I was rethinking my career in IT, and I was really struggling to find the passion to continue working in the IT environment. And I was thinking to myself, so what will I do next? At the same time, my active playing career was coming to an end, because I'm a footballer myself. I played here in Kenya up to the nationwide league level, and in Switzerland, where I was residing in the amateur ranks. So around this time, my career active playing was coming to an end, and I felt like I still had a lot to do in football. And so I went on an adventure to find out more about the sport. And coincidentally, I came across a course that was football, more than just a game. And this was the most intriguing moment, if I can say, in my football career. I got to learn about football, not only as a sport, but as a social, cultural, and political phenomenon. So just briefly after that, I also experienced a very tragic event in my life. I lost a very good friend and former teammate as well. And from this, I decided to organize a tournament that we christened Obama Cup. And that was in 2016. And initially, this was just to bring together my friends, former teammates of Strathmore University FC, and see how we can use our social capital to help each other. And Obama Cup was really the nucleus of the Football Foundation for Africa, because the following year, when I was coming to organize the second edition, is when I decided to theme the tournament Tackling Unemployment Through Sport. And I decided to invite teams from the corporate sector, teams from academia, so that we create some kind of networking platform, especially for amateur footballers, most of whom I had realized was struggling with employment, or rather unemployment. And from the success of this tournament, I had the idea of doing something much bigger. And that was now the Football Foundation for Africa. So this was towards the end of 2017, when I decided to set up the Football Foundation for Africa. So initially, just an idea in my head, I said, I'm going to work to improve grassroots football in Africa and to really drive more investment at that level, because I think that's really the bedrock of anything that we are trying to do in the industry, not only in football, but all other sports as well. So that was me. My contract with the United Nations was also coming to an end in 2018, and I said, yeah, this is the time to venture into what has driven my life for a long time. And in July 2018, I launched the Football Foundation for Africa.
Yes, and this doesn't seem like an easy feat. Can you give us the steps of how you did it? Just setting up the foundation. What was your motivation? What was the drive behind everything? I know you're looking at grassroots football, improving football in across the continent. What was the motivation behind it?
Mm, let me say, personally, I've always been driven by football, and I think football helped me a lot in my personal life as well as professional life.
Mm-hmm.
So I always knew there was something about this sport that I could contribute to. And remember, my first attempt was to turn Strathmore University FC into a semi-professional team. By then, I was still a student in the institution, and I remember approaching the administration and telling them, we have such a good team. I think we can do a lot more with this, whatever we have. It didn't work out then, but when I think back, I had that entrepreneurial mindset around sport. And then fast forward now to 2015, where we have this tragic event that clearly indicated that football, as big a sport that it was, as big an industry as it is, was not creating the right opportunities, especially in Africa. So our focus has been on player development and football development. But if you really look at the kind of opportunities that are available in the industry in Africa, they are minimal. So this is what drives me. Every time I'm doing something in football, I'm thinking, what am I creating? What value am I creating? What kind of jobs can I create, not only on the pitch, but also the supporting roles, if I can say that. So I'm just driven by value creation within the football industry, opportunity creation within the football industry.
Yes, and also just to continue, before we'll come to what is ailing African football, why are we not hitting the heights like when it comes to the likes of the European football? Let's talk about the achievements so far in this journey with the Football Foundation for Africa.
I must say, just setting up the Football Foundation for Africa, I didn't realize, but this has been a huge success for me. Challenging as it has been the last 2 years, a career transition, same time setting up something on my own as a first-time entrepreneur. It's been challenging but very fulfilling, and I consider that a great success. And then going back, especially with the tournament, Obama Cup. Obama Cup has now it's now we did the 5th edition earlier this year, just before COVID-19 interrupted everything, including the sporting industry. And this tournament has really grown. I've seen this tournament grow from just 5 teams in a very friendly atmosphere to 16, actually 20 teams, because in 2020 it's the first time we introduced a women's competition. So this has been also a source of fulfillment for me in this journey. And we've grown the tournament to the extent that now we have included other aspects to augment the tournament. These include workshops centered around development of life skills, which are very, very important. And I've also had the opportunity to organize the same tournament in Botswana. And again, there we call it FFA Cup, but exactly under the same theme, tackling unemployment through sport. And it was interesting the way it was received there. I remember while I was there at the end of the day, at the end of the first tournament I did there in 2018, somebody just walked up to me and said, "We hope to see you here next year. You have really brought joy to our village," because this was right in the village in the northeast district of Botswana. So FFA Cup has now done 2 editions. 2018 and 2019, which is a great success. I was hoping to go back again this year, but as things stand, we can't do it. But I hope next year we'll be able to do it, and also look forward to working in other countries. So that has been a success. But from the outside looking in, I think in 2019 we won the Football Heroes Award, which was presented to myself in Moscow, Russia. This was for me.
Tell us about that moment when you're told actually this award will be yours.
This was a very interesting time because I was, like I imagine with most new ventures, I was really I was struggling. Some days can be really long and empty. And I received this email that you have been nominated for the Football Heroes Award. And I looked at it, and I looked again. I didn't quite believe, or I didn't take it very seriously, though it didn't look like a scam, let me say, because there's a lot of this happening.
Yes.
So the first thing was to share this with my family. Look, guys, you have been nominated for something, and they have told me if I win, I get to travel to Russia to pick up the award. And that to me already was a success. It was very, very exciting. And yeah, a few weeks later, they confirmed that I've actually won in my category, which was for social responsibility initiatives, and I would be traveling to Moscow. And I remember even as these the back and forth with the organizers was going on, I knew some of the people who would be there, and these are the people who I had grown up watching. And top on the list was Francesco Totti, and that's how much you just mentioned at the onset about UEFA Champions League and how much we've invested ourselves in European football. So I remember saying, I will go to Moscow, and the only thing I want to do or I want to bring back is a photo of me and Francesco Totti for all purposes. But yeah. Yes. I traveled to Russia in September 2019. I took 5 hours at the airport in Russia. One experience that needs another day to tell. By the time I was arriving for the awards, it was just the time for me to go up on stage and receive my award. And the announcer said, to present this award is Francesco Totti.
Wow. And literally a dream come true.
Yeah, I felt a chill go down my spine. Like, I didn't believe it. I was there for 2 minutes, and I was going to receive the award from Francesco Totti, and I would be having the photo taken. So I didn't have to take a selfie or ask somebody to take the photo. That was really exciting, and I must say, at this time, it's really like the highlight of my career. Yes, or rather my journey in this industry. Yeah.
Yes, and this just shows you what happens when you put your heart into everything, and that's what you've done so far, Brian. Putting your heart, and you didn't say, "Let me just do it for Kenya alone." I want to do it for the whole continent, and I know it has been baby steps, but at the same time, with these baby steps comes the challenges with it. Tell us the challenges you've gone through and how you've managed to overcome them, or what you are seeking to do in future to continue the message behind this Football Foundation for Africa, to continue the work behind Football Foundation for Africa.
So for the challenges, I can say they are personal as well as organizational challenges. Personally, I had to go through a very difficult transition. I was changing my career and at the same time relocating back to Kenya after about 10 years away from the country. So there was really a lot of adjustments to do on this front. And because of resilience and just trying to also look at my network of people for support, I've been able to maneuver this stage. I'm still not out of the woods, but I'm comfortably installed in Nairobi at the moment, of course, waiting for a time when I could also get into other African countries. From an organizational perspective, The biggest challenge has been finding the right resources. And when I say resources, I mean like the human capital, just to find people who are experienced, educated around sports management or the business side of football, the development side of football. It's very challenging, and that's one of the things that I set out to address as through the Football Foundation for Africa, because I realized we have not invested enough in the education side of football in Africa. So that has been challenging. And to address this as well, I am happy, or rather encouraged, that I have managed to identify a few young people. If I say young, I mean younger than me. Some of whom are still playing actively in different levels, but who are willing to get involved on the business side of it, or rather are excited to get involved in the business side of it. So I've been trying to mentor these gentlemen and ladies, and sharing my experience, sharing resources that are out there, because I'm also still going through a learning process. So I'm sharing this learning journey with them, and it's great that I see that they are really appreciating what they are coming to know about football, not only in Africa but also at the global level, because we cannot speak about Africa and divorce it from the globe. We have to develop it with that mindset.
Yes, and you brought this conversation back home, and now let's get to the serious side of this talk. And as we said, we are creating conversations that will help shape the football industry in Africa. For the first time ever, we are taking back our power, and we're saying, you know what, when it comes to football, Africa can actually emerge king and also can emerge top when it comes to good infrastructure, good systems. This is when we're talking about education and governance. But now, what exactly is ailing African football, Brian, from your point of view?
I think we have a number of factors that are ailing African football. And for me, I will zero down on three. And these are the three factors that I tried to address with the Football Foundation for Africa. One is education. Two is infrastructure. And third, it's governance.
Yes, and if we go to education, if you kindly, Brian, if you can break it down for us, these 3 points. Let's talk about education, the lack of education when it comes to even, something like our footballers not knowing the contracts they're signing, our footballers not knowing so much maybe about the club, the history, the football journey, what needs to be done. And then we have these arising issues. Tell us about that, the lack of education in the football industry in Africa.
So the lack of education, again, you can look at it in two ways. One, there's what you have just mentioned, like the education of players, because our focus in Africa has been on player development. That is the talent, the football talent that they have. That's the education they receive. But rarely do these players get an education, or rather, they do not progress beyond high school level education. I mean, this is something that FIFPro has done an analysis. I think more than up to 70% of professional and semi-professional footballers coming from Africa do not have a tertiary education. So this is what puts them as players at a disadvantage. One reason being football is a very short career. I think especially here in Africa, you have probably 10 years maximum, and then you have to figure out how you're going to live half your life. And without a quality education, the quality of life that you lead post football career is severely impacted. And you find that you find a lot of footballers at this point now struggling to try and catch up, or rather to find an education. And usually it's never too late, yes, but it's a huge challenge. And then secondly, education, and I mentioned earlier, it's the aspect of sports management. And if I can narrow this down for football, I'm thinking about football enterprise education,
Yes.
because we don't understand football as an industry, as an enterprise. You see, and this means that we have not developed the supporting careers that support the football side of things. And here I'm looking at journalists like yourselves. I don't think we have enough qualified, passionate sports journalists who can cover the game in Africa in depth. We have legal aspects of the game. When you look at the governance structures of football in Africa, we really need people who are working on the legal system that works for Africa. We have things such as marketing, football marketing. We copy a lot of what we see in Europe, especially when it comes to marketing, but we fail to contextualize simply because we do not have a research or knowledge pool to tap into as a continent. So whatever we are doing is usually just on the surface and does not really take into account the African context. So this is something the Football Foundation for Africa is trying to change. And we will see this with the guests we invite on this show after myself. And yeah, we're looking forward to this. Also, this show
Yes.
is also just one of the avenues in which we can start highlighting this
Yes.
aspect of the industry.
Yes. Yes, and we hope some of the people in the sports industry, the football industry, can actually learn from this show and just to know the conversation, just to know drive the football forward. Back to your point, still on education, we have like more than 50 countries in Africa. But when it comes to talking about a few clubs, let's now go to the club level. A few clubs that are actually look like they have the systems going on. You just talk about Egypt and you have Zamalek, Al Ahli, or you go to DR Congo and you have the likes of TP Mazembe. But when then comes to maybe when you go to down to the South Kaiser Chiefs, but when it comes to other countries, it's the same when it comes to the football associations. And when you talk about the lack of education, actually that brings a lot, a lot. But why is it that we Africans do not want, who are invested in the football industry, do not want to take the extra mile to actually learn what will work for us, Brian, and what can help the industry? Why do you think that is the case most of the time?
As I said, this lack of education has also greatly impacted the kind of leadership that we have in sports, and there are also historical aspects that we constantly have to analyze so that we understand where we are today.
Yes.
And one thing that I can mention, African football is very political, especially when we look at sub-Saharan Africa. This is not necessarily a bad thing, as we put it, but the issue is initially when we received football, that is from the missionaries and the soldiers. When they brought football to Africa, we truly embraced the game. And if you read some of the history behind this, we even became better than those who had brought the game to us. And then fast forward to around the time African countries were seeking independence, football was a great mobilization tool for political movements and the fight against colonialism. But now the challenge is we did not move away from that political aspect like other continents did, for example, Europe. So we still have a lot of that in the sport. There's a lot of passion when it comes to the leadership, and then there's always the political aspect of it. And when an environment is overly politicized, there is very little room for strategy and strategic analysis to take place. And that is what is ailing African football, especially in sub-Saharan Africa,
And
away
and
from South Africa. Yeah.
yes, and as you say, bad politics kind of equates to corruption. And you know what corruption is doing to African football? Actually, it's sinking African football. When it comes to the FA elections, when it comes to player contracts, when it comes to player negotiations, I feel like also the FAs, kind of, some of them, let the players down and let football down. So how can this corruption be dealt with in this football industry?
First of all, I'd like to say, corruption is not just a problem in African AFAs. I think we need to get that right, Sean. Corruption is a global problem, and it's a global problem, and it's especially pronounced in the football industry. And again, it boils down to the kind of leaders that football industry attracts. These are people who are usually passionate, but rarely do they have the knowledge to run the sport, and that in itself is a recipe for bad governance. And bad governance is basically what breeds corruption. Then again, we have to start looking at the global structures, the global governance structures of football, and how they impact the running of the game in Africa. Look at how we work nowadays. We basically survive on funds that are coming from FIFA, and our federations or associations are rarely challenged to do the thinking work. So for them, they receive funds which they're supposed to spend. Again, the spending is controlled, but accountability now usually becomes a problem. And that is something that needs to change right from FIFA. So let's not say it's an African problem, because whatever happens in African football, usually these are events that are formed into patterns. You will always hear squabbles in African association and in other developing countries outside of the continent. But when you take a systemic view of this, these are structural issues within the global football industry. So we need an analysis of this to be able to come up with the right solutions to counter what is we are talking about as corruption. And of course, I don't think we'll ever do away with corruption completely, but I think especially in Africa, if we mitigate the effects of bad governance and corruption, we can really grow in leaps and bounds.
Yes. And how can African AFAs and also just the African football industry improve on the governance part?
That's again that's a difficult question, because sometimes you get the question, what is good governance? What does good governance look like? It's very difficult to pinpoint what good governance look like, but there are some things such as transparency, which should be quite obvious. Accountability when it comes to spending of money, that should be quite obvious. But now, when you say how can we change these in African association, again, is to build our own capacity. We need to start thinking of how we are going to invest in the education for the next crop of leaders in the sport. And we have to start this at a very low level, and that is the grassroots level. If we get the governance structures right at the grassroots level, this will automatically translate to the top. But historically, it has always been a top-down approach. So it comes from FIFA to CAF to the federation, and this has not worked.
So this has to be turned. It has to start from the grassroots all the way up.
Yes.
So that we can always maintain the standards also.
Exactly, because if you look at the situation in most African countries now, I've had the opportunity to work at least in Kenya and Botswana in the football sector. You look at the grassroots club, and honestly, they are not in a position to demand even good governance from their football association themselves, because they are not in themselves empowered, if I can put it that way. And we have one project that we are working on that is kind of trying to address this aspect of the game.
Yes. And let's talk about infrastructure. You also mentioned infrastructure when it comes to the Football Foundation of Africa, education, infrastructure, and governance. You've noticed this is where maybe the problem lies, and you and the team have decided, you know what, it is a step at a time. This is what we're going to do as we try and bring African football to the map, also protecting the players and everyone who works in the industry. So tell us about infrastructure in Africa. Do you think we are there yet? Do you think more needs to be done? Do you think, what is the next step? How does this help everyone who's involved in the industry?
I must say a lot more needs to be done when it comes to sports infrastructure in Africa. The how is where again we need the education. Education will always come up as a thing because when it comes to infrastructure, it needs a lot of education on how we develop it. And when I talk about infrastructure, my thinking was really influenced, especially by my experience in Europe, in Geneva specifically, playing football there. I must say I played my best football when I was there in the amateur ranks. And one thing that I really enjoyed was the infrastructure. And when I say infrastructure, I didn't play in at Benabu or Camp Nou. These were community facilities of good quality, and I think that's where we should go as Africa. We should really think about which were there before. How do we construct sustainable infrastructure in Africa? I can talk about what is happening in Kenya now, perhaps briefly. And we
Yes.
see everybody wants to construct a huge stadium. And for me, this is not really informed by the needs of the industry,
Yes.
because what you do is that you will end up with a lot of what we call white elephants, and to some extent they become health hazards because maintenance becomes a problem,
Very
and
costly.
it's very costly. And if you look at the usage of these stadiums, it will be very low. And this is something that has happened in Europe. I remember around the time I moved to Geneva, there was a struggle between the administration, I mean the local authorities there, and the football club that was using the city's stadium on its
Yes.
maintenance. So you kind of see, even in Europe, they're struggling to maintain these stadiums. Why
Yes.
should we why should we follow the same route and try to build these huge infrastructure? Yes, we need a few stadiums here and there, but our focus should really be on the community level. And
Yes.
and I came up with these three, if I can say that, the triple S framework, which I initially used for infrastructure. There was supposed to be safe, smart, and sustainable. When I say safe, we should think basically just the rectangular surface on which we play. If we get that right already, we can improve the quality of the game in the continent. When I say smart, for me, a stadium is not a smart place because a stadium rarely allows for positive social interaction. But if you bring this down to the community, then we'll have smart spaces. These are spaces that can be used not only for football, but even during the week when probably not much football is happening. These are places where people should be able to meet for other social activities and build on their collective intelligence. And lastly,
Yes.
sustainability. Everybody's talking about sustainability now, and there's economic sustainability, there's environmental sustainability. Climate change is a big issue now. Our stadiums, the one we are putting up, taking into account these aspects. So we need a lot of work there, a lot of partnerships and collaborations to make sure that whatever we are developing is sustainable in the long run.
Yes, and you get me to one point again, education, because all these people, even when it comes to the county governments, like here in Kenya, they need to be educated when they want to set up a structure, and they need people in the industry to tell them this is what needs to be done, not just to say, okay, we'll build a big stadium. It also reminds me of South Africa after they hosted the World Cup. They struggled a bit with those many stadiums. Now, okay, now the World Cup is done. Now what next? They have these huge, nice looking stadiums, but how do you continue also generating revenue from those pitches? And also takes me back to AFCON last year, where I noticed something. Kenya was playing at the 30 June Stadium during the AFCON 2019. And at the 30 June Stadium, they had despite having the big stadium, they had like 4 or 5 pitches, just small pitches. And those pitches, I realized they were for the children. They were for the children, actually. So, what we are talking about, grassroots football. So the young under 16. So at the same time, the stadium, there's no point. The stadium is empty, and the stadium is always hosting tournaments and all these events. So Sometimes I feel like, as you say, Africa needs its own solutions. It's time to take the matters in our own hands, Brian, and continue forward when it comes to building football in the industry. I know we wanted to also take some comments, but Brian, just as we wrap up a bit of the interview, let's talk about Football Foundation Africa, where it is headed to next. What do you want to achieve with it? And who are you targeting exactly? And how can people reach out to you? Because I know so many people in the industry who want to do some good, but because there's the foundation, the structures are not there yet, they don't know where to place their skills, they don't know where to place their money.
In terms of where the foundation really goes, is we have recently launched, if I can say, our strategy for the next 3 years, which could go up to 10 years, and we have labeled these transforming our game. And these strategies based on a subset of the Sustainable Development Goals. I know everybody is talking about Sustainable Development Goals, and it's really important that we bring this conversation to sports and to football specifically, because we have to design sustainable strategies. So this is what we have done, and we are working on 6 SDGs. At the core, we have empowerment and protection of players and other stakeholders in the industry. So that is the SDG on education and the SDG on health. Then to support this, we have the SDG on quality of employment and economic prosperity, as well as infrastructure and innovation. So that's SDGs 8 and 9, which support, because they have to support each other. And then we have the SDG 13 on climate change, because nowadays there is no strategy that should fail to take into account the impact that we are having on the environment, the natural environment. And because as the Football Foundation for Africa, I usually say the only thing that we have is the football. SDG 17 comes in as being very important. So we are looking to build authentic partnerships that can help us to push our agenda. Because you can have all manner of partnerships. There are people who are very ready to invest in football, but are these investments authentic? And at the end of the day, do they create opportunities in Africa, where we have the biggest youth demographic that needs these opportunities? So these are the kind of things that we are thinking about when we are developing the Football Foundation for Africa. And in this regard, as I said, we have recently redesigned our website, and I encourage people to visit footballfoundation.africa. Another step that we have made, because as I mentioned, I've previously been working almost single-handedly. We've also set up our advisory board with participants drawn from various sectors. And this is something I'm also encouraging other football, if I'll call them players at this stage in the industry. Football needs to open up to other industries, other professionals, because historically football has been working in some kind of bubble. Everything we do is done by footballers and people within the industry. And we cannot achieve much if we do not open ourselves up, because it's only by opening ourselves up that we will gain access to innovation and entrepreneurial skills. So again, we will have through our website, you should be able to see the members of our advisory board. And then, as I mentioned earlier, one key project that we have, which is the Africa Football for Development Network. This is really important for us going forward. What we are trying to do is to create a platform for grassroots sports organization, football organization, and to try and empower them. And we have extended our Triple S framework to cover these clubs. We want to make them smart, safe, and sustainable. And initially, we just want to invest in improving their governance structures. And I believe this will go a long way in fashioning them into products that people can invest in, that corporates can invest in, because I believe that also football in the continent should be supported by the corporate sector.
Yes, and also I want to talk about, you've talked about investing in the football business. You talk about grassroots. So let's paint a picture, and let's see what Football Foundation, with also other partners and everyone else involved, can actually make the football on the continent move forward. So let's take, for example, we'll go to Europe. Let's take, for example, Pogba, who's French, who's won the World Cup, also playing for Manchester United. That his transfer fee was quite a massive one. We have his agent, Mino Raiola, who also got something out of it. Manchester United, the club, made so much money from him. Him himself as a player has made so much money. When you talk about also France, using some of his bragging rights, when the image rights come in, making all that money. So, as you say, everyone is involved. It's not just the footballer. It's not just Pogba alone. We have the medics. We have even his own chef. We have even his own barber, who's actually famous because of Pogba. You get my point. And so we are talking about starting the education from the grassroots level, and also starting to teach these young players, and also starting to teach everyone who wants to invest in sports but still cannot kick a ball. Because I think also a problem in Africa is that, as you said, we think that because it's football, you have to actually kick a goal. But I'm here as an example to say I've never kicked a football, but when it comes to the research part and when it comes to the journalism part, I'm here and I can talk about it. So how does Football Foundation for Africa planning to tap into this so that actually the organization can achieve these goals?
This is an issue of how do we get resources to
Yes, the
finance
business part.
the business. How do we get resources to finance whatever it is that we are trying to do? Again, I would say this is still very much a learning process. And what we are doing, or rather what we have done for us, we have to create a business model. For anything to be sustainable, it needs a business model. And for the Football Foundation for Africa, what we have is an ecosystem business model. So it's not the usual value chain, because if you look again in football, we have overly focused on one value chain for a long time, which is on the player development, and that's where you have the Pogbas that you mentioned come in. But now we need to start thinking more holistically, and that's why we're talking about the ecosystem, where the Football Foundation for Africa sits at the middle. And around us, we have different players, including government, in the corporate sector, individual players, and then, of course, we have on this side the consumers, who are normally the fans. How do we engage meaningfully with our fans? It's not just about fan engagement. I mean, of what value is this fan engagement? And I have to mention something as well. We really need to start getting close to government, for example, so that they can support the industry. But also, we have to demonstrate to government the value that you are bringing to the table. So we have to align whatever it is that we are doing with the government agenda. If the government is looking to at sustainable food security, how can football help that? And that's where innovative thinking comes in. We need to go outside the box and come up with solutions that can work for the continent.
Yes, and that's why we have this amazing show. And I'm so excited just going forward because of all the guests we are going to be hosting on this show, and who will, as we say, and as you can see down below, definitely talking to them, and they'll give us the skills. You guys, listen, it's just creating conversations about how we can help each other and how we can help the football industry to grow. There are so many messages coming in. Let me just read some from the guys who are actually watching. You have Peter Msembi, who says, copy pasting without considering local context is indeed a setback. He agrees with you, Brian. As we said, Africa needs its own solutions. So thank you for that, Peter. We have Basil, who's also inviting his friends to check it out. And Margaret Sasha says she's here for the business. I don't know, we have to talk about this. I think enough is enough, Brian. I don't know if you agree with me, with everyone who's involved in the football industry in Africa suffering at some point, because when you look on the other side, even if we're looking for solutions for Africa, we need to actually pinch ourselves and realize that we need to step up as Africans to actually promote football on the continent, because we know football actually is the most watched sport across the globe. And right now, you're talking about, let's say, for example, you have Liverpool, who are the English Premier League champions, and two of their top players are Africans. That is Mo Salah, and actually three of their top players, Mo Salah, Sadio Mane, and Naby Keita. So that means if the structures are set right, if we push ahead, if we come on board and also support organizations like Football Foundation for Africa, then we can scale the heights, the top heights set by the industry. You agree, Brad?
I totally agree with you. And they say you mentioned the Sadio Manes and the Mo Salahs and the Nabicators of this world. But as somebody who has played football, and if you talk to these players, they will attest to this. For every Sadio Mane that you have another 10 who did not make
Yes.
it in Senegal. So what can we achieve if we actually build an environment where these talent can thrive? And that's why we
Yes.
need to improve the industry here in Africa.
Yes, and there are so many people saying, you have Robert saying, good job, Brian. Everyone, I think, is appreciating everything you're doing with Football Foundation for Africa. Ed Bowers, great questions, Sean. Thank you, Ed. We have so many people watching. Thank you so much for everyone. And I know we'll be talking that business aspect. I know I had also been sent for some question, but that business aspect is a broad aspect. And we're just telling you, the viewers, we'll be breaking it down one by one. We have an amazing lineup of guests. Brian, you can attest to this. And I'm so excited. So we'll be talking about everything. And this is a show for everyone who is actually interested in football in Africa. And behind this is a good organization, an organization that has decided to step up and say, you know what? Africa needs its own solutions. Africa needs to move forward when it comes to football, and that is the Football Foundation for Africa. They have their website. Brian will be talking about that again. They have their Twitter account. They have their Facebook account. You can get them on social media. Here's the founder. We're talking to him right now. That Brian is very easily accessible. Let's keep the conversation going, Brian.
Thank you very much, Sean, for this first episode. And yes, I'm very easily accessible on all most social media platforms, since we have so many social media. So on Twitter, for example, it's Brian Wesaala. You'll find me on LinkedIn as well. Facebook, same. And for the organization as well, as I said, our website is footballfoundation.africa. We are welcoming comments, views on how this looks and how we can improve. On Twitter, we are the FF Africa. And on LinkedIn, we are the Football Foundation for Africa. So feel free to write in. We will be communicating more, especially about the Africa Football for Development Network. I've already had people asking as far out as Ghana, how can we be members, and saying that we are not in Ghana. We will get to Ghana at some point. This is an organization that is working for Africa. So we want to create a very open industry, if we can say that. We want to change the trajectory going forward.
Yes, and we also have Basil Fred Katsidoski Ntoko. Let me just say Ntoko says, we have to take football as business, but not as a hobby or something to pass time with. Football is a billion-dollar business if we look at how guys like Messi are making it. So that's just one of the comments. And as we said, Brian, we will be also delving so deep into this. I think it's about time. It's about time we get serious about this industry, and it's about time we step up as Africans. That's why we're not just going for Kenya alone. We are going for the whole continent, because we need each other. So I hope also some CAF members are also watching, and they can also get on board when it comes to this discussion, right?
Definitely. Yeah, I think we welcome everybody on this platform. As I said also, one thing is we are realizing as well is that we have a lot of talent out there when it comes to the education side of it, scholars and all that, but they have not just had a platform to bring their ideas. So this is one thing that I'm hoping we'll be able to do with this show. And just if I can share this, if you'll allow me, like
Yes, yes, please.
the next guest that we are planning for this show was really key in inspiring and continue to inspire my journey in football. This is none other than David Goldblatt, a renowned football historian. So this is where we are starting this conversation from the history and how things have developed so that this can inform the way forward. There is no innovation that can take place without a context to work with. So that's why we are taking this route. And for people who are out there listening who might be interested in being part of this show, please feel free to reach out, info@footballfoundation.africa. We will consider any requests as they come. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you so much, Brad, and thank you so much for everyone who joined with us. Keep your comments coming. We'll be on the page. We'll be replying to them. Also, message us, DM us, whichever you prefer, on all our social media pages. And also, don't forget to follow me as at Shon Osimbo on all social media pages, just as how it is written on your screen. It is wonderful hosting you, Brad. Thank you so much for just telling us and opening up about your journey. Thank you so much for what you're doing for grassroots football on the continent. Thank you so much for actually, most people go to Europe and forget home, but you decided, let me come back home and help. It's an amazing journey that you've shared with us, and we are praying and hoping for the best when it comes to the Football Foundation for Africa. Let's keep this conversation going. It has been a lovely, lovely discussion. Brian, you have been an amazing guest. Thank you so much, and see you next time. And we'll be updating you more on our social media pages. Thank you. Have a lovely evening.
Thank you, Shon.
You're welcome. Thank you, Brian.